Hello there, welcome to this week's edition of Business Week, the program that brings you top business stories that made the headlines during the course of this week, including special news features, market data, interviews, and much more. Welcome to the show. Here's the highlight of the biggest stories we tracked for you over the course of this week. Now, on the local front, the domestic debt owed by state governments and the Federal Capital Territory also rose to 6.43 trillion naira at the end of the year 2021. Nigeria also spent a total of 1.29 trillion naira on wheat importation last year. That's a 71.1% point higher than what was spent the previous year of 2020, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. And the federal government has also incurred 950 billion naira new domestic borrowing between January and March this year, according to the Debt Management Office. And on the international front now, British inflation shot up faster than expected in the month of February to hit a new 30-year high, worsening a historic squeeze on household finances. And also in the news, debt obligations from Russian companies linked to sanctioned billionaires were keeping investors on tenterhooks earlier at the start of the week on Tuesday as coupon payments to foreign holders of the securities ran into hurdles due to Western sanctions triggered by Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. And in the United States, Federal Reserve officials are helping shape market expectations for sharper interest rate hikes to curb the surge in inflation, but have no money to dispel fears that tightening cycle could blow a hole in the economy and labor market. Well, it's now time to bring you special packages prepared by our correspondents. Now, in this first report, airport users at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos will now have a new experience at the new terminal inaugurated by President Muhammadu Buhari on Tuesday. Adiolaojo witnessed it all and reports.
This is the second visit of President Buhari to Lagos this year. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, his Yobe State counterpart, Mai Mala Buni, and Minister of Aviation Hadi Sirika were among dignitaries in attendance. According to the president, the facility was built on a landmass of about 56,000 square meters with 66 check-in counters with capacity to process 14 million passengers annually.
It's an eloquent testimony to the strong commitment of our administration to the development of world-class infrastructure across all sectors of the Nigerian economy. Our continuous investment in the building of long-lasting infrastructure in the aviation, road and rail transportation, agriculture, telecommunications, and other critical sectors is yielding massive results, and the people of Nigeria are now increasingly attesting to benefiting from the associated dividends.
The long-awaited facility is expected to create an avenue for old international terminal to be overhauled. Some lawmakers and concessionaires at the airport describe the project as capable of transforming socio-economic fortunes of the country.
I also want to thank FAN for the wonderful opportunity given to concessionaires like us, Sula, and some other concessionaires. It's going to create an enabling environment for businesses like us to thrive.
This airport is commendable. The terminal is commendable. That we need to open more frontiers, more cities, to Nigeria. So both the population will be increasing, more airlines will be coming up.
The terminal project is coming 8 years behind schedule. While every new thing like this terminal brings joy, how effective the maintenance culture here is will determine for how long the joy will last.
And now, within the power sector, it has been a busy week for members of the House of Representatives Committee on Power as they held a series of meetings to ensure that electricity is available to Nigerians. Now, the lawmakers charged the Ministry of Power to double its efforts in making it a reality during an interactive meeting on the collapse of the nation's grid. National Assembly correspondent Jakadisa reports.
This cannot be the best of times for Nigerians, who, after enduring all forms of challenges, now have to contend with possibly the worst period of power outage. The collapse of the national grid has led to a variety of problems affecting the welfare of the citizens. It has led to collapse of small businesses whose operations depend on stable electricity supply. This has attracted a public outcry, especially in the midst of scarcity of petrol and high cost of commodities.
I received a correspondence from you.
The legislators have called this meeting to find out from those that should know reasons for the embarrassing situation.
There is no light, no fuel, no gas, typically no energy.
The permanent secretary in the ministry stands in for the minister, who is unavoidably absent. He insists that the crux of the matter is that a disruption in the operation of gas plants is responsible for the collapse in the national grid.
Current problems are due to disruptions in some gas plants. Despite proactive actions that were earlier planned to ramp up generation by thermal gas plants at this period in anticipation of low water level at the hydropower stations.
And the lawmakers are livid.
My heart bleeds for this country. We may never have it right, probably during our time.
To assume that there is some level of conspiracy targeted at maybe bringing down government efforts at trying to make power work, despite all the monies we have appropriated to this.
Honestly, my heart bleeds too, because even the solar, the PAPSEC is telling until the end of next year. Yes, so that means we will continue to be in total darkness until end of 2023. Haba.
And a very sad situation. These problems are not just starting now. For instance, we know every year there will be shortage of water, and then there will be problem at this time.
The lawmakers directed the ministry to provide further information on steps being taken to restore electricity to Nigerians and promised to report the development to President Muhammadu Buhari for his action.
And shifting focus now to the maritime sector, port traders are accusing shipping companies and terminal operators of frustrating business at the nation's ports. They allege that service providers are exploiting the system and escalating cost of doing business. TVC News correspondent Ifunayeze has the details now.
Port traders have been consistent in their complaints of exploitation and excessive charges from service providers in the ports. The issues often highlighted include the depletion of container deposit refunds, undue debts on equipment detention, absence of holding bays for empty containers, among other inefficient practices that tend to hike the cost of doing business in the ports.
It will take you like 5 days to drop container in their designated holding bays. Getting there, you find out the forklift machines are not working and they are billing you. At the end of the day, they will tell you that you are owing them. You have example like you see people that are owing over 20 to 20 something million naira. At the end of that day, that 20 million naira will turn to be zero. So how can a country move, a country progress in this kind of situation? When somebody is owing you money at the end of the day, you now turn out to be the debtor.
Shipping company will delay you out of frivolity for demurrage to accumulate because they've killed business in Nigeria. Investors don't come again. That is the problem I've seen. So there's nothing. If you pay container deposit, you are in trouble. If you want empty vehicle to enter with empty container, you are in case. Whatever you want to do is problem. Extortion, corruption.
They want government to scrutinize the activities of shipping companies and other service providers, especially as it concerns cargo handling equipment, noting that inefficient operation is fueling costs. They maintain that as it stands now, the final consumer eventually bears the burden.
You come to some places, they don't have operational machines, operational crane to do their work and all that. Even our indigenous companies here also, most of them don't have issues of equipment. At the end of the day, then we keep billing the customer, the importer, which the masses, because what we don't know about whatever is happening in port industry is like it's spread like wildfire. These things get back to the end users.
Port regulatory agencies have also been tasked on the importance of ensuring that port traders get value from service providers.
Well, it is about our time now where we bring you the feature on the show today as we take a look at reactions trailing the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria's policy direction so far to leave all parameters unchanged, and then its impact on the nation's economy and the overall sentiment of fragility. Thank you very much for still staying with us. Let's now deal with the crux of today's discourse. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria has left rates unchanged alongside cash reserve requirement at 27.5% and liquidity ratio at 30%. Lara Folayo has the details.
It's the second Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the year. The impact of the Russia-Ukraine war, which has impacted negatively on the fuel situation in the country, alongside a rise in inflation and fourth quarter gross domestic product figures recently released by the statistical authorities, were major considerations in the committee's decision. The fragile GDP, as well as potential external and domestic headwinds from the war, would not allow for tightening, as this would affect expected investment expansion necessary for growth and absorb shocks. Loosening also has potentials to worsen inflationary pressure.
MPC voted 1. to retain NPR at 11.5%, 2. retain the asymmetric corridor of plus 100 and minus 700 basis points around the NPR, and 3. retain CRR at 27.5%, and 4. retain the liquidity ratio at 30%.
The committee wants urgent steps taken to address the fuel and power supply situation in Nigeria. The bank says it will meet with the NNPC and stakeholders in the power sector to see what role it can play in helping address the situation.
If there's any kind of intervention that we can provide to help it make it easy for them to bring in these products, so that this shortage can stop.
It wants the fiscal authorities to fix the country's supply-side challenges and emphasizes the resilience of the banking system owing to the state of non-performing loans. The bank also intends to intensify interventions in agriculture as a catalyst to moderating rising food prices.
If agricultural output in our various products are improved, what you will find is that we would see a further moderation in food inflation, which may help to dampen the effect of the rise in core, thereby moderating effectively at the headline inflation.
The Monetary Policy Committee left key lending rates unchanged at its last meeting in January on grounds that there is a need for existing monetary policy measures to permeate the economy.
And now, to look at the implication of all of this in terms of the economic policy direction the government is tilting towards, and also the Central Bank of Nigeria, I have with me, joining me virtually, Adiolaojo, an economist. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Now, at the start of the week, in its consideration, looking at the MPC stance as to whether to hold, tighten, or loosen, the MPC remains really concerned that the global situation, looking at the Russia-Ukraine crisis, tightening in order to rein in the rising price levels. The MPC was of the view that this would heighten the state of the fragility of the current GDP growth rate and also the potential external and domestic headwinds from the Russia-Ukraine war, looking at a contractionary policy stance which would likely stifle the expected investment expansion needed to drive growth and absorb the shocks in Nigeria. And on the part of loosening as well, the committee feels that loosening would also trigger further liquidity to fight and also fuel inflationary pressure as available funds outstrip the economy's absorptive capacity. Now, with the heightening uncertainties we have in the economy as we speak today, do you see this as the best measure to manage inflation in the country, especially taking into cognizance the fragility of the economy amid the energy crisis we even have at hand? We've had the petrol scarcity, aviation fuel, now power.
The position they've taken now is, from my own point of view, is the correct position. And they gave us reasons why they took those positions, which you have correctly enumerated in your question. Because if they should do a contractionary inflationary measure in one way or the other, it's going to affect the economy. And if they should say, let us do the expansionary effect also, it will also affect us. And the end result of the expansionary part, because they could have considered the expansionary measure, because at the contractionary part, a whole lot of things will be stifled, and the growth that we expect to happen in the economy will not happen. So the next available plan actually is for them to say, okay, let us consider the expansionary measures. But they found out that if that also should be followed through, one of the challenges that we have been trying to monitor and manage for some years now, that is the CBN, and which have been a point of discussion, which is a forex, will also be affected because that will also be at the end result of the expansionary measure at this time. So they thought it wise that rather than considering the expansionary effect, which is going to affect forex, or considering the contractionary effect, which is still going to stifle growth, because GDP growth that we actually expected to happen in the country is also going to be at the receiving end. So they decided to have a hold, so that they are not considering contractionary, and they're considering expansionary, but they want to let what is currently in place, which is all the parameters, to still be. And that was the position they considered. And I think it is right as of now.
Okay, now what's your stance on the progression of an interest rate hike by the United States Federal Reserve Bank as well as the Bank of England? Now, in terms of contextual response to global economic shocks, central bank governors have had to tailor their fiscal and monetary solutions with the greatest of intent to mitigate the impact of the shock. Now, with both countries significantly interconnected to the global financial markets, global capital flows are also expected to experience some downturn exacerbated by this increase in Russia-Ukraine crisis. How well now do you think the Nigeria economy is being positioned today?
I would say the position of the US and that of UK. These are first world countries that we already know. Their economies are in the top positions across the globe. That of US, I would just say, it's a first line decision, because if there is any challenge like we currently have now, inflationary measure actually went up a bit in US, and the next position they took was, let us hike our interest rates so as to be able to bring everything down, be able to adjust all the challenges. The UK too also did that, because their economies are first line, in the first line effect even of global economics. But that of Nigeria is not on the first line, neither are we on the second line. So invariably, whatever UK and US decide to take will in one way or the other affect us. And I think that was also one of the things that they considered at the MPC, that if there's going to be an hike in interest rate, which already is in place in US and UK, the possibility of some of the investment or money or that is expected to be an inflow to us in this country will not be able to come down here any longer. Rather, it will go to these countries. And when you have that shortage within our own economy, it is going to cause an imbalance. And when there's an imbalance, some of these measures or some of the plan that we have in place will no more be, we will not be able to carry them out. And if we are not able to carry them out, then there's still going to be some more imbalances in the economy. And I think that was why one of the things the CBN ought to have done was to increase the interest rate at our own end that you asked the first time, was to increase the interest rate, so that at the end, more people will be encouraged to put in more fund or to have more investment in the economy, so as to be able to have more returns given to them. But the CBN decided to have a hold. Why? Because rather than considering what is happening in UK and US, they're also looking at what is happening internally, which was one of the things I have been also propounding and be asking us to consider over time. Let us look at our internal economy, the way things are, then for us to make decisions. And I'm happy that this time around, they consider that as their own first priority, rather than increasing so that they can get more investment or got more money into the economy. What they did was to retain the interest rate as it is, so that the economy of Nigeria can balance. And I think that is also a good way for the CBN. But going beyond that, I believe that if we're able to actually find all necessary things that we need to put in place to balance the economy, then we can also be a global player in a matter of time. But it is not now. It's a matter of the future.
And now on the part of our external reserves position, the committee also notes that decrease in the level of gross external reserves to about $39.4 billion as of the 17th of this March from what we had in January, about $40.2 billion. This is indicating a price differential, a decrease of about 1.95% during this period of review. Now, the moderate accretion to reserve reflects the duality of Nigeria's position as an oil exporter, a major one at that, and then a major importer of refined petroleum products. Do you think we really have a clear-cut plan, even with the passage of the PIA, as oil remains our major foreign exchange earner? And how do we now begin to expand this base to gain more from the non-oil sector?
As we currently have it, like you mentioned earlier, Nigeria is an exporter of crude oil. We import refined petroleum products. And by the time you get to look at the whole thing, by the time you look at the plus and the minus, both the net and whatever, by the time you consider the net, you find out that we aren't making much like we should have made. And that's the reason why our contribution especially contribution of oil to the economy, especially to GDP, actually dropped from 90% at the initial stage to less than 10% now. If we're able to produce, we're able to refine, we're able to consume it here, then invariably we're going to see a lot of changes happening here in this country. That is one. Then we just learned too that about 90% or so of our crude in Nigeria is being stolen. And that's also another challenge, because if it is being stolen, that means what we project we are going to receive as income. For example, we are currently producing about 1.5 million barrels per day. If about 90% of it are to go, we're looking at 1.3, 1.35, or as the case may be, disappearing every day. Then that means what we are supposed to receive as income will not come to us. And we're going to have challenges in the economy, because when the income cannot meet up with the expenditure, there's going to be imbalances. And that's one of the first things that cause problem in this country, imbalances in the system as a result of corruption, stealing, shortage of revenue to our expenditure. Those are the things. So invariably, I would say, sir, that PIA has a lot to do, but for us as an economy, we need to make sure that oil sector works so that we can get the best out of it. That being apart, we have considered this over time that oil should not be our mainstay. And thank God it is no more the mainstay. Because if we are all going to rely on oil, I believe that the problem we have in this country will have been much more than it is now. So oil is only giving us less than 10%. We have non-oil sector that is giving us more than 90%. We need to do massive investment in the non-oil sector. And thank God also, we have some of these parts, because the non-oil sector have different contributors. We have the ICT sector coming in, we have the agri sector, we have the manufacturing sector, we still have one or two other sectors that came in that contributed immensely to that part. And one of it is banking and finance. I think the banking, the financial sector also contributed to it. So we should try as much as possible to invest massively in this area, especially in manufacturing, because if we are able to manufacture our products from cars down to even the value chain of agriculture is much. Even in the petroleum sector, the value chain is also much. If we're able to have this done in our country, you get me, sir? And we have a very large market here, 200 million people. Then we have the 55 countries in Africa, which is now coming under EFCTA, that we can also explore. So invariably, we're going to have more massive income.
We are wrapping up our conversation. What's your take now on the domestic outlook, going by available data on key macroeconomic indicators suggesting the likelihood of subdued output growth for Nigeria's economy for the most part of this year, and necessary stimulants to catalyze growth, looking at the next quarters that we're expecting, as politicking is also going to take center stage?
We now have a problem of Ukraine and Russia, which has caused a surge, a hike in the prices of petroleum products across the globe. And we could see what diesel is costing to the economy. When a particular company that was supposed to be productive, maybe 6 or 8 hours, they now had to shut down early in time because of diesel, cost of diesel. You get me? You see productive entities shutting down their production, reducing marginally their production. And when you begin to reduce your production, you know the effect. Later on in time, there's going to be shortage of supply. And when there's shortage of supply and there's much demand, you know the end result, they're going to cause hike in the economy. That is one. When there's shortage of supply also, and there is less, because for organizations that are shutting down their production and they are reducing their production, that means the expected revenue will not be met. And that when expected revenue is not met, the people, the staff, the people they pay are also going to be affected. So a whole lot of things are happening within the economy. So the imbalance in the global economy through the war, the Ukraine-Russia challenges, sanctions upon Russia, all is going to affect us in this. Already it's affecting us, and it's going to affect us more. So what we need to do, sir, and that is the reason why they are projecting that our output for this year is going to reduce. The GDP projection that we are projected will be reduced because it is the total sum of your output in the economy. And when there is no output, it is what you produce that will sum up. So, and as it is now, the summing up, the output is reduced and it's going to be affected. So I still believe that with if it continues the way it is now for the rest of the year, we are going to have a very low GDP growth. But if it is able to be nipped in the bud in the next 1 month or two, we're going to we may experience a level of growth for the economy. Then considering that this is also a pre-election year, already politicking has started. So we're going to have this is going to be a challenging year, but for the economy as it is, it can also be the best year if we make plans.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Adiolaojo. Well, just before we go now, here are graphic details of the selected food price watch for the month of February as prepared by the National Bureau of Statistics. On that note, that's a wrap on this edition of Business Week. Many thanks for watching so far. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm David Alabi. Bye for now.